This is a tweet from the Canadian Prime Minister. He's talking about hockey, the national pride of Canada, and where the greatest players have come from, like Wayne Gretzky, Bobby Orr, and Gordie Howe. But whose game is it really? Out of the 32 NHL franchises, 25 are in the United States. And counting up until 2025, the last 30 Stanley Cup finals, the most important trophy in hockey, have been won by an American team. Canadian teams only made it into 6 of those. But now, the playing field has changed. Investment is flooding into the sport like never before. The franchises combined are worth over $60 billion, more than any time in history. The NHL has revolutionized the sport for an entirely new fan base. And the success is exposing a fight between America and Canada, which has been going on for more than a century. On-ice fights are just the tip of the iceberg. It's deeper than politics. It's a fight for the sport itself. America is fighting to keep a fan base alive, while Canadian teams may be on the brink of financial destruction. To understand what's going on in the NHL right now, first, we have to go back to how and where hockey evolved. This is the Victoria Skating Rink in Montreal, Canada. It's not a black and white photograph. This is a painting. And it's the very same rink where the first organized ice hockey game was played in 1875. Over the next few decades, ice hockey exploded, crossing the border into the United States. Different leagues jostled for power before. In 1917, the National Hockey League was formed, better known as the NHL. Stadiums started popping up. The Montreal Forum, the Boston Garden, Madison Garden 3, and the Chicago Stadium were all built primarily for hockey. Canadian teams were traditionally the most successful, but over time, this changed. The New York Rangers, the Detroit Red Wings, the Chicago Blackhawks and the Boston Bruins became just as strong. The league expanded to 12 teams in 1967 and had reached 30 by the year 2000. This moment was a turning point. It was 1993, and the Montreal Canadiens had just won hockey's most coveted trophy, the Stanley Cup. It was also the last time a Canadian team won it. But unlike the Super Bowl, which selects a different location every year, the Stanley Cup finals are held between the 2 cities of the teams that qualify. Games alternate over a best-of-7 series. That means successful teams can bring their cities a huge boost. In 2021, the Montreal Canadiens made it onto the final for the first time in 28 years. Despite losing the series, they won a nail-biting game against the Tampa Bay Lightning in front of a home crowd. And that night, there was a 245% surge of spending in Montreal. The economic impact of each playoff game for a city is between $4 and $8 million. That money comes through fans visiting restaurants, bars, and buying sports-related products. For an entire finals, the impact is estimated at $50 million for a host city. Seeing this value, investors are scrambling to get into the NHL. The New York Islanders were taken over in 2016 for $635 million. 2 years later, the Carolina Hurricanes sold for $500 million. And most recently, the Arizona Coyotes were transformed into the Utah Mammoth in a deal worth a whopping $1.2 billion. On paper, it's a no-brainer. Between 2000 and 2023, the average NHL franchise multiplied almost 9 times in value. But what's driving all this growth? It all comes down to how the sport has been packaged and which new audience is being targeted. Inside stadiums, the NHL introduced digitally enhanced dashboards that can target audiences based on their location. These boards have brought in an estimated $200 million for this season alone. These boards, combined with personalized advertising on streaming platforms, traditional advertising, and marketing deals, have helped the NHL bring in $1.4 billion last year in sponsorship revenue. But more importantly, the NHL has targeted a demographic that is crucial for the longevity of the sport: Gen Z. Companies popular with its younger audience have entered the hockey market. TikTok has become the official partner of the Washington Capitals, and the gaming company EA is an official partner of the NHL. The NHL even brought in Justin Bieber, a global pop star and die-hard Toronto Maple Leaf fan, to design the 2024 All-Star Game jerseys to help bring in younger viewers. More and more of its own advertisements are targeted at this age group.
Is Gen Z the laziest generation?
Yeah. We don't work hard.
Impressed?
Kind of basic.
The NHL has recognized that it needs to use new technology to reach new audiences, and a key battlefield is social media. In 2013, the NHL signed a deal with IMG, one of the biggest global marketing companies in the world, to expand the NHL internationally. IMG has been the driving force behind its international social media strategy. Between 2019 and 2024, followers of the official NHL Instagram account doubled from 3 to 6 million, with younger, more online viewers looking to connect to players in a different way. The NHL has allowed players to create their own content and build up their own brand. Following in the footsteps of Formula One's Drive to Survive, the NHL gave behind-the-scenes access for a docuseries, Face Off Inside the NHL, shining a spotlight on many of hockey's young stars. The show made it into Amazon's top 10 in the United States and number 1 in Canada. These digital strategies have worked wonders. In-game attendance has grown to the highest in the NHL's history, with over 23 million throughout last year's regular season. And internationally, on its European social media channels, the NHL attracted 175 million video views. Heads are turning towards hockey, and the NHL has reached a record high for revenue, generating $6.2 billion annually. The most valuable team right now is the Toronto Maple Leafs, worth $3.8 billion. That's more than double the average American team. So then, why are experts predicting that it's Canadian teams at risk in the future? A huge problem for Canadian teams is the way their businesses operate. Companies use a measurement called earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And based on this measure, 3 Canadian teams were in the top 5 of the NHL, earning over $100 million a year in 2023. However, down near the bottom were the Winnipeg Jets and the Ottawa Senators, earning just $5 million between them. This gap between Canadian and American teams will only widen. Why? Firstly, the salary cap is set to increase from $88 million this season to $95 million next season. And by 2027, that number could be as high as $113.5 million. In theory, this kind of hard salary cap is designed to keep the league more competitive. But as the maximum spend rises, so does the minimum amount teams must spend, which by 2027 could reach $83.9 million. Canadian teams will have to find new ways to raise revenue, like increasing ticket prices, searching for more sponsorship deals, or reassessing their rosters. Canadian teams have their position weakened by their currency. The salary cap and spending rules are made in US dollars, making decisions straightforward for American teams. But when the value of the Canadian dollar fluctuates, managing finances becomes complicated for Canadian franchises. A rare success story in Canada is the Edmonton Oilers. The team was bought in 2008 by Edmonton-born billionaire Darryl Katz for around $200 million. He threw money into getting the best players, training a talented young squad, and using veteran players for stability. It worked. The team grew to a value of $2.6 billion. But the days of passionate homegrown billionaires could be over. The NHL has also opened itself to private equity investment. Like many other sports leagues around the world, private equity firms can now buy up to 20% of an NHL team. What does that mean? It will most likely accelerate the league's growth and increase commercial opportunities. But some worry that it could put short-term profits over the long-term well-being of the NHL. Private equity has been described as vultures and vampires, and many sports teams have tried to resist giving power over to groups that have no real motivation for the teams to succeed beyond extracting profit. Over in America, NHL franchises face a different threat. When asked about what their favorite sport is, over 40% of Americans say football. Ice hockey barely makes it into the top 5 at just 4%. A lack of homegrown talent or an amateur and college ice hockey system makes it difficult to build interest. Football is deeply ingrained in American culture. Hockey isn't. Most Americans don't grow up playing or watching it. Last season was devastating. Viewers for the playoffs dropped by a staggering 31% in the US. And if a Canadian team can break the 3-long-decade curse to win the Stanley Cup, these figures could drop even lower. If America wants to hold on to hockey, its teams will have to follow the NHL's lead and market to a young, new audience. Hockey is just one of many American sports in a time of monumental change. And even American football isn't safe. It's faced with a crisis that even the NHL doesn't have. The NFL is running out of host cities. If you want to learn the fascinating reason why no one wants to host the Super Bowl, click here.